Yeah. Salam
Salam
alaikum.
alaikum.
Okay, you can hear me?
I can hear you loudly and clearly. Can you hear me?
Alhamdulillah. Yes, I can.
All right. So this conversation is being recorded for quality assurance.
No problem.
And we're here with our good brother Anwar, a relatively recent learner in the University Online Learning course. And we're going to
Indeed.
take things nice and easy today. And we're going to discuss a few of the fundamentals of NuNETICS. I'm going to ask you first to just give us a little bit of background on who you are and how you found out about this class and what you might have been learning thus far, if you will.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I have uh, had the pleasure of knowing who you are and getting familiar with your instruction for, well, I guess want to say well over a decade. Um, my father was, I want to say, your first student, and you used to do the conference calls um, by phone, and he would uh, very religiously make sure to be on the call. And so that I don't, I guess maybe because I can't even say how long you've been teaching, um, but yeah, I almost want to say I felt like I was a young man. And I'm 44 now. I'm 44 years old, but
Yes.
it almost seems like I know it was well over 10 years, possibly close to 20, um, when you used to do those conference calls. Um, I was very fascinated with your understanding of Quran and your approach to teaching Quran, and but it wasn't until more recently uh, that I wanted to take a serious deep dive into uh, your understanding, your school of thought, um, and so that's what has led me to you. Now, a little bit about myself. 45 years old from the Northeast area, born in Philadelphia, raised in South Jersey. Um, I am a teacher by profession. I've owned a restaurant more recently, opened and closed the restaurant, and am looking to open another restaurant, inshallah, in the near future. Um, I can recall I'm married. I'm married, been married for close to 17 years. A lot of
Beautiful.
people are surprised that I've been married for as long as I have been because they don't think I'm that old. But I've gotten a little bit long in the tooth. I'm not, I'm not. I guess you would consider me a middle-aged man at this point. 44. I think most people would consider that to be middle-aged. Um,
Is relative. That's a relative thing.
yeah.
We're
But
both still very young men.
I feel that way.
Yeah.
I don't look at it like, but I'm 44, been married for 17 years, and I have three beautiful daughters. Um,
Wonderful.
for the past 10 years, we were living in the United Arab Emirates. My family and I had an opportunity, my wife and I both had an opportunity to go out there and teach. Um, and we jumped on that opportunity because we wanted something not only different for ourselves, but something different for our daughters, an experience that most kids their age uh, would only imagine, you know. And so we went there and we stayed there for as long as we felt we needed to, which was 10 years. And we moved back. And when we moved back, we didn't move back into the Northeast. We decided to try the South, give the South a try. We have
Hmm.
family and friends, and we've always enjoyed our visits to the South. So we decided on the Atlanta metro area. We don't live uh, specifically in Atlanta, but we're in the Atlanta metro area. And we've been here for roughly 6 months.
Mhm.
And just getting acquainted and adjusted to the area. Um, Another thing about me that I think that you and I, the last time we had a personal face to face, when we were in person, was at Eid celebration, Eid
Yes.
al Fitra in
Was that in
New
Philly?
York. It was in
Was
New
it New
York,
York?
Masjid
Okay.
mostly Khalifa.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
and this was I think this was our first. That was our first face to face meeting. I introduced myself to you because again, I had been familiar with you for so many years. So it was an honor to be able to pull your ear for a little while, and we spoke for a good while. Maybe I want to
Yes.
say at least an hour. And I had shared with you that I was a fledgling screenwriter, and content developer.
Okay.
Um, and I've had I want to say some minor success. I was a part of a few film productions in the past, and I've actually written two screenplays of my own. So we shared that in common. I remember you being a playwright.
Yes.
We had talked about those things, and I had also shared some images of a series that I was working on that you really liked, and I was happy that you had liked those images so much, um, and so yeah. But I when I moved to the UAE, I had set aside some of my ambitions for screenwriting and film production while I was there. But now that I'm back here in the US, inshallah, I want to be able to re-explore uh, those interests and
Excellent.
see how far it takes me. So that I think that's pretty much the gist of who I am, and you know,
That's a wonderful biography.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so now I'm really excited about um, just what uh, NuNETICS can teach me about this dean, about myself, because I think like you, I see the religion for more than just what is considered the conventional approach
Mhm.
to worship, and I know that it's so much bigger, and I've always maintained that it has to be so much bigger than what we understand it or perceive it. And I haven't really, and Allah is God in the sense that nothing happens coincidentally or by chance. And so I think my curiosity, that energy, was pulling me in your direction. And I'm thankful that it pulled me in your direction because, when I started to hear you teach on the NuNEG system, uh, it really, like you said, it really connects with our nature, and this in this world, this reality that we live in, all of it is one. It comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there would be, in my mind, no reason to have been so uh, intricate in its design, uh, and not leave a blueprint for how to fully understand the design and how to live in this reality uh, in the most natural, in the most feature based way. So, you know, I'm excited because I know, everything that I've heard from you up until this point has really aligned itself with the Quran, which is where we should always start. We that should always be the starting point for everyone who professes this religion, and so I'm really excited about really getting into the Quran, getting into the Arabic language. And I've taken Arabic courses. Um, you know, my children uh actually speak it even better than I do.
Mhm.
But
It's good.
I'm just really excited to really get uh a full understanding, a clear picture, so to
Great.
speak. Yeah, to
Great.
get a
Got it.
clearer picture. So,
Got it.
and so that's why we're here today.
Right. So I'm going to drop a few gems on you today.
I'm excited about that.
Something for you to ponder now that I know where
Hmm.
you are
Hmm.
and why you are, what you are. And I've always felt a special frequency coming from your direction. So I'm not going to necessarily begin you where I begin others because you already have a particular history that has exposed you to the language of Arabic.
Hmm.
I call it that, and I say it that way for a reason. You have studied Arabic, but I'm going to introduce you to Arabia.
Mm.
See, there's a difference.
Well, I want you to
See,
see I got my notebook.
yeah, just like I asked.
I got my
Okay,
manual.
yeah, yeah. Let me
So,
see. See, I have my Amazon version.
oh, nice, nice, nice.
Yeah, you gotta go
Yeah,
order your Amazon
that's
version
that's
also.
that's the one that I want.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I'm about to put about two or three more on in the next, or up on Amazon in the next week. So you'll be able to order from there also. So
Alhamdulillah.
let me say this. First of all, your name says a lot. I'm not going to go into details of that. Anwar, being connected to Nur.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much information power packed into how Allah uses the word Nur, which they translate as light, but it means much more than light. But even if we only thought it meant light, if we study light, we're still going to get much more out of that word than meets the
Mm-hmm.
eye. No pun intended. Because light does meet the eye,
Yeah.
but it
Mm-hmm.
also meets the nervous system. We have what
Mm-hmm.
are called the light codes, CODES,
Mm.
which are operating throughout the human being's nervous system. And we have two nervous systems. We have a
I'm.
central nervous system
Mm-hmm.
and we have an autonomic nervous system. That's not the lesson for today,
Mm-hmm.
but just understand that the nervous system is based on the study that European scholars have done on the word nur, which is how they came up with the English word nerve. And the science of the nerves is called what? Neurology.
Mm-hmm.
So what is ology? The study of what is nur? Light. So neurology is the study of light, but the light codes that are operating throughout the human being's nervous system, the primary one of which runs up and down the spine, up and down the cord. That's your central nervous system doing that. And it branches out to many other parts of the human body. So again, when Allah says nur, listen to what Allah says now. In the surah called Nur, Nur, the light. He speaks about himself as being the light of the skies and the earth. You see that?
Mm.
Two different systems. He's the light of as-samawat and also the light of al-ard. And I just mentioned that we have two distinct nervous systems. One is the central nervous system, which runs all the way up to the pineal. And the other one is the autonomic, which controls a lot of the automated movements and the things that need to be done for the body that don't take conscious thought, like breathing, respiration, that kind of thing. Those things could never run on consciously intended thought. Because if you had to consciously remember to breathe, or to sweat, in a
Hmm.
certain temperature. If you had to, man, you spend all your life trying to remember the next thing to do. How many beats did my heart do in the last minute? It's supposed to be this many, but I don't think I lost count. Human being would go crazy if he had to turn the autonomic actions over to the conscious brain so that you'd have to think about, you know, how many times did you blink? We don't know. You're blinking now. I bet you can't tell me how many times you blinked in the last 30 seconds. I have no idea for you or me, right? So those things are being automated by the instinctive brain, which is mostly connected to the autonomic nervous system. And much of the autonomic nervous system is operating within the gut. See? All right. But Allah talks about himself in the Quran as being the light of the heavens, of the skies, and the earth. And then he also mentions in that same surah the phrase Nur ala Nur, light upon light,
Mm.
Nur upon Nur, nerves upon nerves. Central nervous system sitting upon autonomic nervous system.
Hold that thought there, brother
Yeah.
man. The
Mhm.
baby just ran into the room.
That's fitra.
That's Fitra.
Leave that baby
Yeah.
alone. As long as you can hear me, I'm good.
Okay. Okay.
I love the sounds of nature.
Well,
Let a
I
dog
just don't
bark,
want
let a
to.
cat
I don't want
meow.
to distract too much because I mean I can hear you, but then she'll try and get my attention
Then
the
you
entire
work it
time.
on your end. I'm just letting you know it doesn't bother me at all. So you do what you need
Okay.
to do, and
Okay.
we'll continue. We're not
Um,
rushing.
she ran out the room. We're okay.
Okay. Listen, I have 8 children. I know exactly what to go through.
Yeah.
All of mine are grown now. My youngest child is 22 now, so all of mine are grown and out of the house. So
Alhamdulillah.
thank Allah.
Yeah.
But I had to go through, four. What was it? Yeah, 3 at a time, and then 4 at a time, and then
Mm.
one in between. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's wonderful. Life is wonderful just to be able to hear them. Knowing one day that we may not wake up and be able to hear them,
Right. You're
or
right.
as in the case of my oldest son, who's deceased now as of last year,
Mm.
he may wake up and not see us. So we treasure these
Mm.
moments.
Hmm.
And everything that Allah sends us is an ayah, is an instruction. We don't always know what the instruction is right away, because as Allah says, most people don't ponder these ayat. He says he put them in the skies, he put them in the earth, and he put like signs in us. He says, but most human beings paid no attention. So what I do first and foremost, whenever something comes into what the young folks call my cipher, when it comes into my cipher, I try to decipher what's in my
Hmm.
cipher. What message is Allah sending me by sending my child at this particular moment into my cipher?
Yeah.
What is she doing? What is he doing? What is he asking for? See? Because all of it is a test on the human framework that Allah says he created fi ahsani taqweem. So whatever happens, as Oscar Brown said once in his song, Oscar Brown Jr., I don't know if you're familiar with that artist.
I don't think so.
You need to Google his music.
Hmm.
He said, I've always lived by this golden rule. Whatever happens, don't blow your cool. You've got to have nerves of steel. See? And he said, and never tell folks how you honestly feel.
Mm.
He said, I've lived my whole life this way. For example, look yesterday. And then he goes on to recount this story where he was involved with this relationship where he was telling the woman how much he loved her and how much he cared for her, and it wasn't reciprocal.
Mm.
So after he had spilled his heart to her, she runs off and does something quite different than what he expected. So he said the key is not to lose your cool, because he lost his cool and he ended up in prison. Is the
Hmm.
moral of that story.
Mm.
But he said, just stay cool, be cool. You know, there'll be others to come. Don't worry about that. So,
See, in hip hop, they would call that a bar.
a bar. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because hip
Okay.
hop lyrics are written in like 16 bar
16 bars.
stanzas.
I get it.
And so they always say, "Oh, that's a bar." When you hear
Yeah.
something that's like a jewel or a gem.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Yeah. Makes sense. There's a lot of science in hip hop,
hmm
a lot of science in the terminology. And a lot of times, and this is just us talking informally before I get into a
yeah,
formal conversation with you, that when we think about the sciences, people tend to leave music out
I
and they
agree.
separate it. They say arts and sciences. Music,
Yeah,
music is as much a science as biology.
I agree wholeheartedly. Hmm
In the same way that these physical sciences, we have social sciences, we have psychological sciences. Psychology is a science. In the same way that these different fields, although separated from each other, they're still related. In the same way that they are sciences, music is also to be included as a science. It's a science because it's based in the fitra, first and foremost.
hmm
And the fitra has been created by Allah for evolution. The fitra is evolving. And if you listen to my lectures on YouTube, you'll hear one where I'm dealing with the concept of what is called involution and evolution.
Right. I've
A
heard those terms.
couple of months back. Now, all of the sciences have to go through this process, but we're on the evolutionary side as we speak. So everything that is connected to the fitra must, out of necessity, experience evolution, including music. No matter how raggedy you might think it is, no matter how rock and rollish or hip hopish you might think it is, it's still a part of the natural progression that Allah has clocked into the fitra that cannot escape the fitra. So says
Hmm
Allah in the Quran. He says that there is to be no alteration in the creation of Allah in His fitra.
hmm
Surah 30, Ayah 30.
hmm
Right? La tabdili li khalqillah. There's to be no changes. He's not only saying not to do it as a warning to the hard-headed, big-headed scientists. Don't try to change Allah's fitra. As science is trying to do right now. That's what the whole
hmm
mRNA, fake DNA, fake RNA thing is that they're trying to replace your real RNA with the whole COVID, SMOVID mess. Right?
Right.
They're fabricating fitra. What they're not realizing is that it has a time uh, limit, just like air pollution. It's like it's
Mm.
the end of the world in certain parts of the world, like China and India, that have all of these chemical pollutants and everything. But the beginning of the so-called lockdown showed us something very important, and that is that just a few days of not driving your car and not operating your, other stuff that puts these chemicals and pollutants in the air, just a few days of that, and it's back to blue skies again
Right.
because
Right.
you can't change the fitra. You
Right.
can mask it, you can hide it, you can play charades with it, but whenever Allah decides to take you out of the picture, the fitra bounces right back to what it was.
hmm
And this is how and why Imam W.D. Muhammad said something that I consider to be a real treasure. And he said this in 1975 when he first became leader over the Nation of Islam after the passing of his father, Elijah Muhammad. He said, the judgment of God is not that God is going to come back and destroy the earth
hmm
and destroy the skies and the trees and the oceans. And he said, those things have never been disobedient to their Lord. So why would he destroy them? He said, the only thing that's been disobedient has been man, meaning the human mind.
Right.
So the destruction of the world in the end of days is not the destruction of the physical universe or the physical earth. It's the destruction of that mentality
Mm.
that produced the criminal and produced the abject behavior the obscene stuff. That's what Allah is going to come and erase from the blackboard.
Mhm.
And that's what the world is going through right now. But we have to step back in order to see it. We can't be right up on it and see it.
Mhm.
It's too close.
Do you
See?
believe? Do you believe that idea is tied in with what Imam Muhammad spoke about with
hungry.
with
Hello?
Hey,
Noah?
beautiful. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. It's so good to see you.
This is
Okay.
Azara.
Azara.
Azara Khadija.
Azara Khadija. That's such a beautiful name.
You heard that?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Will you come be in my class next week?
Yeah,
So
because when Daddy was a kid, he didn't want to go to school.
Well, Daddy's in school right now, and I'm his
Yeah.
teacher. So he's
So
got to sit and learn with me for just a few more minutes, and then you can have him back, okay?
okay.
Okay.
So if
All
you
right.
need anything, go see mommy or go see Alea or Amira. Okay. And then when my class is finished, then I'll come and see you.
Okay.
Okay.
But my
Okay.
dad, bye.
Yes.
But my dad is not in school.
I'm in school right now.
Well, he's
I'm
in
always
school on the
school.
computer.
He's not in real school.
Well,
This is a real school, but it's on the
He,
computer.
he's not in your.
She's looking for the
I know.
the chalkboard and the letters.
Daddy,
And
you're not in your classroom.
no, but that's okay. Look, go to mommy. Let me finish here with my meeting, and then afterwards I'll come find you.
I want food snacks.
Okay.
because I'm
You
still
gotta go talk to your mommy, okay? And see,
That is so
brother,
precious.
ma'am,
Yes.
she's always attached to my head. So she runs to me for all her needs.
Yeah. Yeah, I
You know.
understand. I have 4 daughters and 4 sons. I understand.
Yeah.
I
You know,
understand.
so it's no surprise that she came looking for me for fruit snacks
Yeah.
she probably walked past everybody else in the house.
Yeah, they had food. They were loaded
Right.
with everything she could hanker for. They had it, and she passed
All
right
right.
by.
She said,
Well, that's
"No, I
because
gotta find Daddy because Daddy the only one who can get them for me."
well, that's because Daddy vibrates on a certain frequency that she's tapped into.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
about frequency.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
what was my point?
So I was saying, that idea, that concept that you mentioned about Allah uh, eliminating that mind, that synthetic mind,
Yes.
if you will.
Yes.
It seems
Choice
to
of
me,
words.
yeah, it seems to me like it ties in closely to what Imam W.D. Muhammad spoke about with Noah and the flood, and the idea of what that flood is. It's not flooding the earth and destroying the natural world, but it's flooding and destroying the man-made world, the world that takes man out of his nature, and only those things, those natural things that were on the ark will be able to rise above all of that, the flooding of corruption, the flooding of
Yes.
bad intentions, you know, of the schemes of Shaitan, all of those things.
Yes.
I think that's what you're saying. Probably when I think about those parables and how Imam Muhammad described those parables to us, that's what you're referring to.
That is correct. That's right. The flooding out of the corruption, which is not an essential part of man's fitrah. Sometimes we conflate the two and think that sin and wrongdoing is actually a part of human nature. It's not. Human nature will accommodate sin and corruption, but only for a certain measured amount of time, as the Quran tells us over and over again. He told that to Iblis, didn't he? Iblis
Yeah.
said, give me a certain amount of time. And Allah said, granted,
Mm-hmm.
right? He said, however, when that time is up, when I come with my clock, all bets are off.
Right.
See? So everything has its time, and what is done within that time period actually fits right into line with Allah's essential method for doing things that he calls his sunnah
Daddy, I don't know
in the
where my other
Quran.
sock
He calls his way of doing things his sunnah, the sunnah of Allah. In the Quran, there's no mentioning of Muhammad's sunnah
Right.
per se. Per se. There are implications based on the traditional way that Muhammad had of doing certain things and arriving at certain decisions and that kind of thing.
Daddy, I don't know where my
But
other sock
there's no literal mentioning of the Sunnah of Muhammad in the Quran. There's only that mentioning in the books of Hadith, the reports that are said to be of Muhammad, which most scholars who are worth their weight will tell you that the majority of the Hadiths that have been discovered are actually fabricated. This is their report, not
Mm-hmm.
mine. They say the
Right.
majority of them, the overwhelming majority of them, of the over 700,000 hadiths that have been reported, they say less than 7,000 are, in their eyes, legitimate.
Mm.
That's a huge percentage.
Yeah.
You know, it's like someone saying to me that I'd like for you to have a glass of this water, but 70% of the water has pollutants in it.
Mm.
I'm not going to stand there trying to get the pureness out of 70% impure water. I'm just going to leave the water alone altogether and go for what Allah said is the pure substance, and that's the Quran itself.
Daddy, you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna come to
So
my menu first.
all of the guidance that you're looking for in the Quran is already contained, pardon me, all of the guidance that you're looking for within the reports, the hadiths, are already contained in the Quran. And this is what a lot of Muslims are now beginning to recognize, but for a very long time have been very slow to recognize because they think that they need the hadith as a supplement for the Quran when that's not true. According to the
Right.
Quran itself, that's not true. The Quran calls itself fully detailed.
Mm-hmm.
And the first question people will ask, again, this is just a sidebar conversation until I get into the lesson.
Yeah.
Um, the first question people ask is, well, how would we know how to pray if we didn't go to the hadith? Because the details of the prayer, what they call the ritual salat,
Hallelujah.
those details are not in the Quran.
All right.
So my answer is, if they're not in the Quran, maybe you're doing something wrong. My
And I wanted
first,
to. I
my first
definitely
thing is
wanted.
not to say Allah did something wrong or Allah
Oh
forgot
yeah.
to put it.
Right.
See, or Allah did that so you could depend on the minds of men who 2,500, not 2,500, but 250 years, 300 years later, after the prophet's passing, you depended on the passed down oral reports of people who might have been very sincere, very good people. But I mean, how far does your memory go? I could ask, I could whisper something to you
Mm-hmm.
if we were together. And you could whisper it to your wife whispers it to
Daddy always
her
talks
sister
like
whispers
this.
it to your aunt in the same room. We've
Right.
done this.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time it gets back to you, it's sometimes the opposite of what you said.
Right.
So how can we depend on hearsay to establish truth? So those are some of the arguments that people have, in terms of Quran versus Hadith. And the other thing is, the main point is that Allah calls the Quran itself the best of Hadiths,
Mm-hmm.
Hasanul Hadith, the most excellent Hadith. So if Allah has already given me the most excellent Hadith, why do I need other Hadith? You want to say something behind that?
Yeah. I wanted to. And obviously, this is our one, inshallah, one of many one-on-ones that we'll have over the course of time. Um, but I certainly, and it doesn't have to be addressed tonight, but
Mhm.
I want to understand more about the historical uh, events and decisions, because I'm a bit of a historian myself. I'm not I don't think there's a lot for me to learn, obviously, but I'm very fascinated with history and the truth about what happened in our past.
Yes.
But I want to hopefully really get down to the bottom of the intentions of hadith and the intentions of um, our practices in Islam, because I think the thing that has been the most challenging, and not just for me, but for anyone that I encounter when it comes to the deen, is the expression of salat, how we express salat. And are you okay? I'm on low power mode. I may have to switch to a charger soon.
What you have to do?
um, but you know, uh, it's been. I really want to get down to understanding um, if we've been doing it wrong, if we've been understanding it wrong. I don't even want to say doing it wrong, but if we've been understanding it wrong. And you may have addressed it in maybe a past lecture. I have to really take my time, and there's so much that you've addressed in so many past lectures, and I have every intention on watching every single one and taking copious notes from every single one. I think that will catch me up a lot faster uh, than just the one-on-one session. But I really want to, like I said, get down to understanding then what is the true expression of Salah for the
I'm
Muslim.
glad you asked that question.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the short answer.
Okay.
So we can get into our lesson for this evening. The short answer is that if you don't know what the words in the Quran actually mean, then you're going to always be off base. If you don't know that when you step up to bat, that you begin at home plate, if you don't know that much, you shouldn't be in that game. If you don't know that when you learn Arabic, especially Quranic Arabic, that home plate begins not with root words. That's second base and third base.
Mm-hmm. Right.
First, a home plate when learning Arabic
It's the seed.
is the seed letter. You have to learn what the letters mean. And let me tell you the danger in not knowing what the letters mean. The danger is that now you are left to the discretion of those who are dictating to you essentially what these words mean, what these root letters mean when you combine them 2 and 3 and 4 at a time.
Can you hear me? I lost a bit of the sound.
I can still hear you, but not as
tried
clearly.
to switch subtly over to the charger, and I think that it has.
Yeah, you take your time and do it.
I'm just trying to increase.
I can always edit out of the video, whatever.
I think you can hear me loud and clear.
I can hear you. Keep talking.
On.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, my wife, she just came and fixed it. You didn't see her hand, but she came and fixed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Allah for the help.
You can understand. I got a lot going on around me with the children. And
that's why I appreciate you even more. I appreciate you even more that you're taking the time to do this. And we're only going to go as far as we can go up. We know we have dinner and other things waiting on us. So do I on this side. So and plus I have another call coming up around 8:15 or so. So we do what we can do. And again, whatever happens is by the permission of Allah that it happened. I could have intended to teach you certain things tonight that don't happen. Yeah. And that happens to me every time I teach. I have my notes and structure and all, and then we get into it and the frequencies take us to some other place. But my point about the letters, and then we will get into just a couple of examples of what I did want to bring to you this evening. The point about the letters is that if you don't start out understanding what those letters are bathed in, then you're never really going to understand the gist of what the words mean that those letters are forming. And here's the beautiful thing that Allah has done, especially with the Arabiya language, what they call Arabic. Allah has tied each and every one of those letters into his fitrah, not into the schools of thought, not into the ulama, not into the sheikhs and the shakers. He's tied each and every one of those glyphs, alif, all the way to ya. He's tied each and every one of those glyphs into his fitrah. So every one of those letters can be identified in nature. Now, as they become identified in nature, then all I have to do is go to that object in nature for my study, and I can actually bypass the schools of thought. I can bypass Instructor Bilal once I got that information. He's given me enough. You mean to tell me this means this means that, this means the other? Well, let me go to those things and see if his contentions are correct. Because now I can take each one of those letters and start putting them together in the form of the root words that they give us. For instance, the word for knowledge, what in Arabic?
Knowledge.
Yeah,
Um, why am I
there's many words, but I'll give you the basic one. Ilm,
Ilm. Yeah, yeah, ilm.
alema,
No,
yeah,
I know,
alema.
I knew that. I was just drawing a blank.
No, but there are 4 different words in the Quran though for knowledge. So if
Yeah,
your brain starts traveling in different zones, it's okay.
yeah.
But ilm, the essential letters are Ain, Lam, and Mim.
Mhm.
Ain, Lam, Mim. Now, if I were to identify those 3 letters as parts of your human body,
Well, before you continue, right?
yeah,
I can give you ayn because it's literally I
yes,
in Arabic. And when we were living in the United Arab Emirates, the town that we lived in a city 90 minutes outside of Dubai, called Al Ain.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And it was probably named after the first standardized dictionary in the Arabic world. There were no dictionaries in the time of Muhammad.
Mm-hmm.
Those dictionaries came about 150 years after the fact, after his passing. And the first one was called Al-Ain or Al-Ain, whichever way you want to pronounce it,
Mm-hmm.
because they saw themselves as giving insight into the language through their dictionary.
Mm.
So, yes, every Arabic speaking person worth his or her salt knows that Ain means eye, that Ainain means 2 eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Had a character on YouTube making comments on my video, trying to convince me and whoever was listening to him or looking at his comments in the comment box, trying to tell me, well, what you're giving people is fabricated. Who says that Aleph means spine? Well, he said backbone. I never used the term backbone. I said spine. He said, well, how could you say it means backbone? Who are
Mm-hmm.
you to arbitrarily assign? Well, then just ask that person who claims to know Arabic. What does the word ayn mean? And
Yeah.
if he's worth his salt, he's going to say I. Okay, well, if that letter means I, how come all the rest of the letters don't have meanings? The Arabs just named one letter after a body part? Do you think they were smart enough to name every letter after a body part? And because you don't know it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It only means you haven't discovered that yet.
Yeah.
And it could also mean that that knowledge has been lost or even hidden. So when Allah
Mm-hmm.
gives that understanding back to humanity through somebody like Imam W.D. Muhammad, who started me on this journey of understanding letters and not just words, and he gave it to him, and now I got it, and I'm helping to advance that logic. Then why are people mad at me? But I know why they're mad at me. Like I told him, he didn't understand the connection, but I said, you're mad at me because you see me as a Negro.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He didn't like that.
Yeah.
I know it's your psychological. I can cut through all of the stuff and go right to the source of your problem.
All right. Right.
You see me as being a Negro, and a Negro is like Nineveh. Is there any good in Nineveh? The Bible asks. He says, how they see us. Like nothing uh unique supposed to come out of people who look like us.
Right.
And that's a problem that many parts of the Muslim world have had with so-called black people and African people. They've had that problem for 1,000 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Muhammad himself couldn't break them out of that. Muhammad addresses that in his hadith.
Mhm.
There's no superiority. You know, that whole hadith. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
The issues around Bilal. Even after he was freed, they kept calling him Bilal the slave. Wait a minute now. Free. Why am I still the slave when you ask about me or talk to me? Ask Bilal the slave. He said, I thought he was freed. My Abu Bakr. Okay. So they've had this issue in the Arab world for thousands of years. Pause. We'll go into this at another date. The ancient
Mhm.
Arabs who are blacker than me and you put together.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
That's
know
a
the
fact.
history. See, I know who I'm talking
I
about.
have some history. I have some history, and
Okay.
that
So I knew
that
I
I'm
could drop
aware
that
of.
on you without hesitation because when you
Yeah.
said you're a history buff, I knew that somewhere in your travels, especially since you've been to the so-called Middle East and studied in that part of the world. And I'm not saying this is true for all Arabs or all Arabs are racist. It's not what I'm saying. No, all Arabs are humans, and humans are fi asadi taqweem all over the world. They created in the most excellent design.
Hmm.
All of this other stuff is stuff that men's minds have introduced. The corruption we spoke about earlier, that
Hmm.
is what Allah destroys in time. But he don't
Right.
destroy the black people. He
Hmm.
don't wipe the Europeans off the face of the earth, because they're the devil. That's not how this thing goes. All right. Um, so every one of those letters can be identified as parts of the human body. And therefore, if Ain means eye and Lam is a reference to the tongue, and Mim is a reference to the belly, stomach, then the word ilm or ilma ceases to be just a word and it becomes, in fact, a sentence because you're taking the meaning of Ein, eye,
Hmm.
Lam, tongue,
Hmm.
belly. Look at the progression in this word. This is why Allah
Right.
chose that language, not
Right.
because of the Arabs,
Right.
because the language had maintained its purity, because the invaders from both sides of that land
Hmm.
did not swoop down upon that land and subjugate those people to the point where they were able to infiltrate that language. So the language remained pure, unlike any other language.
Right.
Marauders, um, superpowers that are flanking you, such as what they had in Persia and in Rome on both sides of that peninsula.
Hmm.
At any time, they could have swooped down and just took over the whole thing and then just replaced their language with that language or the pervading language, the pervading language. But they didn't do that. So the Arabic language remained relatively pure. So Allah chose that language. He didn't choose the people, He chose the
Right.
language. There's
Right.
nothing in the Quran that says He chose Al Arab.
Mm.
It
Mm.
says that He chose Arabiyun, Mubin, clear Arabic, the distinct language.
Mm. Mm.
Nothing in there about Him choosing Al Arab, or for that matter, El African.
Right. Right.
You know, he doesn't choose
That's such a
any groups.
fascinating way to look at it. I've never really actually looked at it that way,
Yeah,
but that was now that you've said it in that way, it makes perfect sense.
yeah,
It was the language. It was only the language
yes.
that
But
mattered. And
let me give you the extension of the meaning for Arabia. I tell you this about M. Eye, tongue, belly. Now, there's an old saying in the world of English speaking people. They say, don't go to the supermarket hungry. They say, if you do, you'll be eating with your eyes.
hmm.
So, you know what that means? Literally,
Yeah.
if you're hungry and you see food,
Hmm.
you see the little chicken roasting in the rotisserie as you come into the
Right.
supermarket, right? And you're like, and then all of a sudden now you can almost taste it.
Right.
especially if you've already tasted it, you know what it tastes like. Now you taste chicken. So it went from the eye to the tongue.
Yeah.
Right? And then now you want it. You want it where? End result being satiation of the appetite in the belly.
Right. Right.
So that's what ilm is in the fitra.
Mm.
This is how it became the word for knowledge and science.
I gotta write that
Because,
down if you don't mind. Let me just
well,
take
you're
a
going to get
second.
this in a replay. I'm going to send you the
Okay,
record.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me
Yeah,
not.
I got you. Now, yeah, just to save a few minutes.
Yeah.
But I saw how it hit you.
Thank you for that.
So now you're dealing with metaphorical meanings for letters. You see, you're dealing now with symbolism in letters, or what the Quran would call the mutashabiha meanings for words and letters. So ayn, eyes, represent insight on the
Yeah.
metaphorical level,
Yeah.
right? So now we're talking about not physical vision, but philosophical vision, insight into something.
Mhm.
As Imam Muhammad said, not just looking at, but looking into. See, there's a difference between looking at something and being able to see into that thing, the workings of that thing, the nature, the
Yeah.
functionality of that thing. That's insight. That's
Right.
ayn.
Mhm.
So what is the tongue? The tongue represents several things. Discretion, because the tongue is where the taste is. And we speak about taste in terms of discretion.
Mhm.
Say if my taste is above the mundane stuff that those people are used to involving themselves in, no, I have higher tastes. My tastes are more cultured than those people. So I don't eat where they eat. I don't buy my clothes from where they, you see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
taste has to do with your discretionary senses
Mm.
because the tongue discriminates.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. The
Mhm.
tongue discriminates.
Mhm. It
Too hot,
discerns.
too cold, too salty, too sweet, right? Tongue cold. No, I don't want that in
Yeah.
me. I
Yeah.
want that in my belly. See?
It makes
Right.
judgments.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's insight into the discretionary nature or into the discretionary choosing of things. You have to be discreet when you're looking into things, when you're gaining insight into things. Now, the insight that you're gaining, you have to be discreet about what you actually allow into your psychic makeup, into your subconscious, into your emotionality. Because people could gain insight into pornography and watching it
Mhm.
over and over again. But does that belong in your system?
Right.
Is that what you're feeding off of? Your discretionary senses should have caught it. It should have said, wait a minute. Am I embarrassed to let other people know that I watch this stuff or that I read this stuff, these porno books and whatever, you know? Do I not want any, do I go into these bookstores with a paper bag because I don't want anybody to see what I'm, well, that's discretion, but you
Mhm.
are sidestepping the moral tenacity that Allah clocked into your fitra soul. You know, your soul is telling you, don't bother yourself with that. That's not why Allah put you here. You see what
Mhm.
I'm saying? So your eyes are one thing, but your eyes can look at, as the Quran says, there's certain things that you're supposed to lower your gaze about.
Mhm.
See? Yeah. Because the eyes are also used to hypnotize you.
Mhm.
Look into my eyes. You remember your
Right.
Dracula?
Right.
Look
Right.
into
Right.
my eyes. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? So
Yeah.
after looking into something, your discretionary senses are supposed to be activated. As soon as it hits the tongue says, nope. Oh, that's nasty. It might have looked good. It might have even smelled good. But as soon as you taste it, and then somebody said, you say, man, this kind of tastes all right. What is this? Oh, you know, that's ham. What the Muslim gonna do? So tui. You know?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, it might have tasted good, but the guidance of Allah says don't put that in your system, right? So we throw it out. Now, the things that we do allow in become a part of our belly, and the acids begin to work on that food to do what though? To send the nutrients within that food to the various parts of the body that need it for continued growth and development. See how beautiful this is, Anwar? See, that's what the belly is doing. It's sending out all of the vitamin A, B, C, D, all E, and all that to all of the parts of the body that require it for its continued usage.
Yeah.
So look at that now. Ein, insight, lam, into the discretionary faculties that are eventually going to deliver that information into the meme. Meme means water, talking about the acids, because it's the acids within the belly that break down the food into relative nutrients that need to be sent to the nervous system, sent to the calcium, the bone, sent to the hair follicle. You understand? So the stomach has to be the grand distributor of all of that nutrition. And the acids are responsible for breaking those things down from larger portions of something into more manageable size portions of something. The human intellect is created to do that. When you look at knowledge, when you're gaining insight into, that's why they also say that the word means science, because it's not just looking at something and not paying it that much attention, it's looking into that thing.
Yeah.
To gain the insight that is waiting for you. Allah has loaded creation, nature, al-fitra. He's loaded it with these kinds of informative qualities that all you have to do is take the time to pay attention. But Allah says about that paying attention, most people pay no mind about the ayat. He said he loaded the heavens with ayat, loaded the earth with ayat. He said, and in you. Allah, he takes his finger right out of the Quran and puts it in your chest, and in you. There's some ayat. In other words, I don't have to build a spaceship, spend billions of dollars to find out what's out there, because what's out there, Allah also put it in here. I have planets floating around my torso, in my torso, my heart, my spleen, my lungs. We don't know that each one of those corresponds with the 7 basic planets that are in the universe.
Yeah.
See?
And when you
Because we
start
don't
to
know that.
when you fully understand quantum physics, you really start to see how what you're saying can actually be proven
Yes,
scientifically.
qualified. That's right.
Yeah,
Scientifically
and qualified.
qualified.
Mm-hmm.
That's enough said about that then. So
Yeah.
that's just that one word, ilm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that gives us a fitra-based concept for how knowledge is to be acquired and dispersed. Just like the stomach is breaking that food down in order to send its nutrients, not just any old willy-nilly place. You don't take your knowledge and send it just to anybody and start talking to the bum on the bench. And, that's not where you're supposed to seek those areas of concern that can actually utilize these nutrients, these nuggets, like I'm doing. I'm picking and choosing who I share it with.
Yeah.
The Bible talks about throwing pearls to swine. Don't do that,
Right.
right? If you throw breadcrumbs out in the park, not every creature is going to run for it. Birds will, maybe some dogs, but there are going to be some creatures. The horse might not stop and look for a breadcrumb. That's not his staple. That's not his regular cuisine. So the only ones who are going to gravitate toward the food are those whom Allah has created that have a hankering for that, right? Or to have an appetite for that. So that's what we're doing. NuNETICS is never going to be a worldwide phenomenon in the sense of every Tom, Dick, and Harry wanting to learn this, because everybody's not on this level of curiosity.
Yeah.
Not even out of the 1.6 billion Muslims on earth. The majority of them are no way and never ever going to be interested enough to want to learn this linguistic science. But I'm not after the majority. I'm after that small core group that Allah calls for. Let there arise out of you an ummah, a group. But the key component of that group is that they have to love Allah, they have to love what Allah loves, and not fear the criticism of those who criticize.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you ready for some NuNETICS now?
Oh yeah.
All right. I put some hors d'oeuvres on the plate just now. I'm
I
gonna give you a full
appreciate
meal
that.
now. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Full
Let me just
course
send out a
meal.
quick text. I have a webinar coming behind you in about 15, well, actually at 8:30. So we're still good.
Okay.
Now,
Yeah.
I'm going to pull up a piece of paper here. And
Now I'm gonna hold off on any note taking. You said just hold off on note
yeah,
taking. You'll send me the
yeah,
replay.
not necessary. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, give me one moment. Had my 11-year-old learner met me on before you, and I'm convinced that he's a genius.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
tell him that if he happens to see this video, but I think he's a genius. Allah is doing something very special with that young man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, his fitrah is very well preserved.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay, so let's give this a little more. Okay. Now, as you probably already know, there are 7 basic parts of the mouth that produce sound. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Ah, okay. So hold on. I'm talking about that. Language, as you know, consists of consonants
Mm-hmm.
and vowels.
Yep.
Okay, so let's begin there. In English, we have the vowels A, E, I, O, U,
Right.
right? However, in language proper, those are not technically vowels. Most of those are actually what are called the diphthongs, but we won't go into that today. Diphthongs, diphthongs. You can look that up on your own if you're
Oh
writing it
yeah,
down.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna have an education background. So
Oh, man. Okay.
all right. So we're good there.
Great. Great. Okay. Now, so we're dealing with consonants and vowels. And if we break the word consonant up here, then we're talking about consonant. Con means with
Mm-hmm.
in this instance, and sonant means sound,
Mm.
as
Like
in
sonar.
sonar.
Yeah.
We're getting somewhere now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a consonant is not a consonant unless it brings along with it sound. But here's a dilemma now, because all of the sounds are in the vowels.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at this. How can a consonant be that which exists with sound when no consonant actually has sound? What gives a consonant sound is the vowel that is attached to it. As a for instance,
Mm.
A. You only hear the sound A because the A vowel is connected to it.
Mm-hmm.
Or, well, I'm sorry, let me give you the consonant, not the vowel. We start with the consonant. So let's say the consonant B, right? It's really not just the consonant, it's that B. Now, if I didn't have these vowels attached to it or with the consonant or with, if this sound were not with this consonant, what you'd hear is,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can hear that.
Yeah. No, it would be like a click.
That's
So each
it.
consonant
Like the
would just
click
be
language.
like
That's right.
just a click.
That's right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be, or the T sound will be That's it.
Right. And you
K
know,
sound.
as a teacher, what
Mhm.
I used to do with because I've taught just about at every level,
Yeah.
from
Great.
as young as third grade all the way up to high school level, 10th, 11th grade.
Excellent.
And so when I was teaching phonics and phonetics to children, um, you know, they used to say, make when we teach the phonetic sound of the consonants, you know, and kids would go b b b, uh
Mhm.
da fa fa fa, and I used to say to them, if you have to take that vowel connection off of it, don't go da, you have to go da
That's right.
you know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. And it was actually Imam W.D. Muhammad who I first heard speak on that.
Mm,
He said that the vowel is not technically a part of the letter.
right.
He said that the vowel by itself is what he called the soul. He called it
Uh,
the soul of the letter.
yeah, you see, okay. You want your bottle? Yeah. Aida, I'm really. Can you come and see about Lazara for now? Mommy will take care of you. It'll be okay. All right. Okay, I think it's downstairs. Can you go see?
I already checked.
All right, go check again, please. Okay. All
Alhamdulillah for our children and our
right.
spouses.
Absolutely. Sorry
Right?
about that. I know
So
you said don't apologize, but you know she's a
unnecessary, but I understand.
rambunctious one.
I've
Yeah.
been there, done that, and I got the t-shirt to prove it, my friend. I understand. Trust me when I tell you, I understand. All right.
Yeah.
So B has to be pronounced with an elongated E sound,
Mm-hmm.
or at least a shortened E sound, B. Right? And the raw consonant is what Imam Muhammad called the soul of the letter. The bare essence is what we're talking about. Stripped of the flesh, stripped of all the habits, the traditions, the personality. The soul is just a connector. See, that's what you're doing when you're pronouncing consonants. You're just causing parts of the mouth to connect. Lips will go, just the two lips connecting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pronouncing the K sound. It's the back of the throat that's connecting with itself. Let's say
Mm.
off.
Right.
The S is just the front of the mouth. Coming together. The S sounds.
Mm-hmm.
L is just the connection of the tongue with the top palate. That's all L is.
Yeah.
R, the connection, rotary connection, the
Right.
tongue and the tongue. So there has to be two parts of the mouth that T, two lips. V, the bottom lip, and the top two front teeth. V, P, the tongue, and the back of the top two front teeth. P. Also, P, the tongue hits the same part of the two top front teeth, back of the teeth, to say as it does to say huh, huh. So D and T are brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They're brother letters, right? The point is, if you go through each of the consonants, they are only consonants because they touch. Once you assign a vowel to that touch, then it becomes a true letter. The consonants are masculine. As a principle, the vowels, obviously, are feminine
Mm-hmm.
as a principle, not as a female, as a principle.
Right.
Why are the consonants masculine? because the consonants do what males do. What do males do? They're the main ones in society who connect with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the sexual department, he has to connect with the female.
Mm-hmm.
He's the plug into the wall. So
Right.
you're not going to get any electricity if the plug can't reach the socket
Right.
or it doesn't fit the socket. You get it? So the
Mm-hmm.
male, the masculine principle, connects with the feminine principle, and that's when you get the power, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. So the consonants connect in the mouth. Yeah. Fa, fa,
Mm-hmm.
connect. That's what makes them masculine principles. The
Mm-hmm.
vowels are all open mouthed
Yeah.
sounds.
Mm-hmm.
I, E, O, U, I, Y,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those are
Mm-hmm.
all open mouth. And who's the open mouth amongst the two genders? I don't mean open mouth, but I mean open period. From her reproductive center, which has to open in order to accommodate your plug,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It has to become open. And then it has to open up again. If there's some germination in there, it has to open up to let out the life form went in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she's the open one. Now
Yeah.
it gives further insight into why Allah says in the Quran about the female, what he says about the female in terms of her sanctity. See, in terms of her protection, her extra
Uh,
added protection
right.
that
Because
she's supposed to
everything,
be given.
right. Because, in that, with that principle, that female or feminine principle of opening, of an opening, it can receive something it shouldn't receive.
Yes, that's the
Yeah.
main point.
Right.
So there has to be guards available to be able to
Right.
sanction what goes in
Right.
and what stays out.
Mm,
You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So
absolutely.
that's the basic difference between the masculine and the feminine. All right. So the feminine again, open. The masculine, connecting. Ching.
Mm-hmm.
So the masculine is the one who has been assigned by nature to be able to go out and get the goodies necessary for raising a wife and family. Not because he's superior, because listen to this, men out there, you Muslim men. It's not that you're superior, it's that you're available. You're not sitting around the house pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So nature gave us an assignment as males because we're the ones who have the time, the muscle, and the availability to go out and work and bring home what the family needs to sustain itself. Then nature assigned you that. Now, there might be a female who doesn't want to be pregnant, doesn't get pregnant or whatever, and she might have better skills at bringing home the so-called bacon, the beef fry or whatever, right? So you got some households, they choose to have the female. She's a bigger breadwinner. She brings home more fulus. She brings home more sustenance. She's in the world. She's a banker, big time banker or whatever. And here he is, he's working in the grocery store packing bags or whatever, whatever. Okay. So she's the breadwinner. And the Quran does not speak against that.
Yeah.
And people say, "Oh, yes, it does." It says that the men are the maintainers and supporters of the women because Allah has given him more money. They have funny translations,
Yeah.
but the Quran never says any such thing.
I've never read it.
Huh?
I say, you're right. I've never read it. Not
No,
not
I'm
from
going to tell you what the
an
Quran. The
economic.
Quran says. The Quran says that the men, rijalu, وقوامون على النساء, that the men are the, I'll use their term, protectors, maintainers, protectors, providers, not for the women, not li nisa, ala nisa, over or on top of the women. Now that gives it a different texture, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to either walk away from that with a very sexist idea of what God is saying he does or is doing for the male. He's putting the men over the women. You see how you can walk away and say this is a sexist, chauvinist revelation, if it's a revelation at all. But Allah says with the Quran, He guides many aright. And with the Quran, He leads many astray.
Mhm.
But He says He does not lead any astray except those who have a will to go astray. So you
Mhm.
have, if your intent is to find some weakness or some deficiency in the Quran, that's what you're going to walk away with, because that's what you went in with.
Mhm.
But if your intent is pure, and you see, I believe this is the sacred word of the Creator, whoever and whatever the Creator is, I believe there's enough wisdom in this book that I've met so far that substantiates my position that I should go into it with reverence and respect. You go into the Quran like that, that's when Allah gives you jewels like the ones we're sharing right now.
Mhm.
Same Quran. The other guy gets knuckleheaded and he says the Quran is a chauvinist book and it calls for the beating of women and all, because he sees all of that through his subjective eyes. Remember the ilm?
Mhm. Mhm.
What he's taking into his brain is quite different. And it's not, he doesn't know how to break down the nutrients of the Quranic message that he's receiving. So
Right.
he just regurgitates and he throws up what he's trying to
Mhm.
ingest from the Quran. Now, this is beautiful, man. When you listen back to this, you're gonna say, "What? Oh, I didn't know all of that was
Mhm.
in there." Now, so it says that Arijalu Qawwamuna 'ala nisa. The men, literal translation, the men are the maintainers over the women. And then Allah tells you why. He doesn't leave you guessing. He says, because Allah has given one more, and the word is fadl, than the other. Now, listen to how Allah phrased that. This is how you know that this could not have been written by men.
Mhm.
He didn't say because Allah gave the man more than the woman. He says because Allah has given one more advantage, whatever you want to call it, money, esteem, whatever. He's given one more than the other. So that statement is left open
Mhm. Mhm.
for the couple to decide who's the one who's got the more fadl.
So is that a mistranslation when I read some translations that use that I don't know if it's that word specifically,
Mhm.
uh, but where it says it's giving the man more physical strength than the other. Is that word physical strength being
No,
mistranslated?
no.
Okay.
That's how their dictionaries might translate it, but that's not what it's saying. And when we get more deeply into the fitra meanings for these letters, you'll see that fa, God, lam, that gives us the word fadl. When you
Mhm.
consonantally connect it with other words, you'll see that that's not what it means. That's
Mhm.
not what it's related to. The word fadl is related to the word father. The
Mhm.
word father is related to the word paternity, pater, in Latin, P-A-T-E-R. F
Mhm.
interchanges with P, B in fadl interchanges with P in pater, L in fadl interchanges with R. See?
Mhm.
So the word for paternity is built into this. So these are the hints that Allah is giving you. Yes, that forever and ever, the majority person or the personality that is going to be going out and getting more than the other gender is going to be the male, but not exclusively.
Mhm.
So when she starts doing it, guess who she becomes? She becomes Arijal. And I know the men don't want to hear that.
Mhm.
She becomes what we would call the man.
Mhm.
Isn't that true for women who are raising their children alone? She's the
Mhm.
female and the male. She's the mother and the father. So the potential for being the father is in her also. And there may exist times under certain circumstances when she's got to perform both roles or the main role, even if he's still in the house.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's a beautiful thing the Quran is doing. It's not
And
making the man masputo. It's not making the man, gay or anything like that.
right.
That's not what it's saying. But it's saying that in time, in history, there are situations where paupers, poor people, have come into contact with rich women. Poor men have come into contact with rich women, and the rich woman just fell in love with them
Mhm.
and wanted to marry him. But is she going to give up all of her diamonds and pearls? No, she becomes the one who sustains the household and makes sure the food, and he does some of the work. He maybe builds the house. He does what he does, but she continues to do what she does without having to give up her family inheritance and all of that to be with this person who's of lesser material means. The Quran is not dealing with values related to people based on how much money they have, how much wealth they have inherited. That's not what the Quran is doing. The Quran is the leveling field for all of that. In the Quran, plus the human intellect to make the proper decisions when it's given the proper guidance. Now, I'm going to have to stop at this point because my friends are texting me wanting to get in on the business
Okay.
seminar, but I think I've given you enough to start with.
Absolutely. Absolutely,
All
you
right.
have.
And inshallah, if this is a good day and time for you, we'll continue.
Yeah, I like Wednesdays. I definitely like Wednesdays.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very
Is
good.
it
So,
and so Wednesdays at 7 um
yes,
is the best time.
that's fine.
Okay.
7 is fine. Okay. And if there's any interruption in that or you need to do something different, just let me know and we can make that modification.
Okay. And
All right.
the
But
same
it's a
for
pleasure
you.
to
Everything.
it's a pleasure to meet you in this manner as opposed to just
Yeah.
texting and
Right.
emails. And I appreciate your brilliance.
Alhamdulillah. I'm
And
humble.
nur, light has to do with brilliance also.
Yeah, yeah. I was
ANWAR.
having a very interesting conversation with one of my coworkers today, who had just found out my first name.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so she was like, that name is so interesting to me, and she had, she makes like most people do, they connected back to Anwar Sadat,
Yeah,
um,
figured.
and so I shared with her just the meaning of it,
Hmm.
and she was her facial expression said it all. And then she had to tell me. She said, I really appreciate um, meeting people whose names have meaning, and
Yes.
how the purpose of that is uh, to give that person an opportunity to fulfill that meaning. You
Yes.
know, And so, it was interesting that we talked about it or elaborated even more on it. I'm
Yeah.
very proud of my name, Alhamdulillah.
Well, I'll say this as a closing note. Something Imam Muhammad said in one of his books. He said that not only Arabic names or Hebrew names or, that part of the world, he said every name has a meaning.
Yeah.
And he went further than that. He said every name has a meaning that is significant to the person who's wearing it.
Hmm.
So whether your name is Bradley, doesn't matter. In the word Bradley, in other words, he said names are not happenstantial.
Yeah.
They're not arbitrary. We think they are because, our grandfather named us or we named our child after our grandmother or our auntie on my mother's sister's side or something. We think because we named her Rachel that that's
Yeah.
just arbitrary, but it's not.
Right. Right.
Allah is doing the choosing all of the time for every aspect of this human life, for every part of the human life, for every episode, for every graduation. When you change your name, it's for Allah is overriding all of our little decisions to do these things. And He is the one
Mhm.
who has superimposed His will over all of our small intents and intentions.
I believe that.
With that said, greet your beautiful family for me.
I
And
will.
inshallah, you'll get this later on this evening. I hope to have this ready and presentable for YouTube, hopefully,
Okay.
with your permission. And inshallah, we'll meet again this time next week.
Okay.
All right.
Inshallah.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
being
so
with me.
much. I'll
Yes,
talk
sir.
to you soon.
Inshallah. Salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.